This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Our friends over at SeatGeek are giving us a promo code of TBA Wrestling. That is TBA Wrestling for $20 off your first purchase. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Gunners Rust Podcast, where we are positively Arsenal, and that we are. And today's a big day. Today, for me as an English person, is a big day. It's the semi-final of the World Cup against Argentina, and we'll get into a little bit of that on today's podcast. But we have had a little bit of transfer news in the last 48 hours since the episode on Monday. And if you haven't already, obviously give us a 5-star review here on iTunes and Spotify. Check us out on Patreon and all that jazz. But we might as well get straight into it. We might as well get into some Arsenal stuff because Trossard has indeed joined Besiktas, and we've now seen him hitting the old celebrations for Besiktas. I don't know what it is. It's just kind of like they throw their hands up and then they don't, and then they do, and then they don't. I don't really know what's going on, but either way, he's done that, and he's in a Besiktas shirt. It's official. It looks like with add-ons it could be around 20 million euros, which is about 17 to 18 million pounds, which is great business when we bought him for 21 million, and that was 3.5 years ago. He's been such a good servant to Arsenal, generally speaking. I think he's been unbelievable just generally across the board, because that was the January in which we were looking at Mudryk. Obviously, Mudryk got a suspension since then. He was also flattered to deceive before that for Chelsea. We were looking around the 100 million mark. And again, that could have set us back a long way as far as other transfers. Like, that was before Declan Rice, right? So things like that might not have allowed us to do Declan Rice if we'd spent 100 million on Mudryk, and Trossard wouldn't have been bought. Then obviously the knock-on effect, generally speaking, is, Trossard helped us get back into coming second every single year. Mudryk might not have. Declan Rice certainly took us to another level. That might not have happened. And we might be a different manager right now, all because of that signing. So I can't really talk about how important the signing that actually was. And again, in the moment, very much like a pivot. It felt like we all wanted the £100 million signing, the exciting one from abroad. We ended up getting one from Brighton, and we all agreed he was a good player. If you're a fantasy football guy, you always knew, Trossard gets your points, quality player. Hat-trick at Anfield recently when we bought him for Brighton. But just a generally good player, and we just thought, and we've done this over the years. We've brought in people like Rosicky, Benayoun. I'm not saying these are all on the same level what I'm saying here, but Rosicky, Benayoun, Hleb. There's been these kind of Mkhitaryan. There's been some players we've brought in that have just been good purchases, I think. Generally speaking, as far as the money to conversion rate, allowing us to get from point A to point B without overextending ourselves and then having a knock-on effect. So for me, I think Trossard's up there. If we ever did a ranking of best ever Arsenal transfers, I truly put him in the top 10. He might be a top 5, because what was so lovely was to see that, Arsenal come to terms with Trossard's sale to Besiktas, but the picture they're getting to use is him holding the Premier League trophy. And I think that is what we forget is there's cult heroes in Arsenal. Sanchez, Ozil, and we might be able to find a picture of them holding an FA Cup. But a player is only usually as iconic or maybe legendary at a club based on the huge honours they bring in. And Trossard, I think that full stop in his last season with Arsenal, getting us over the line, that West Ham goal being his last Arsenal goal, and after review, number 19 of West Ham United, that one, well, that wasn't his goal, that happened after he scored, but that generally was such a lovely full stop on a great career at Arsenal. He's a cult legend. I'd put him in a cult legend bracket. But that's the difference, he is a part of this team that means so much to Arsenal fans, because, dare I say, I think this is the most in tune we are with our squad that we have been maybe ever. And I put them over the Invincibles. I think the Invincibles were an unbelievable team that were winning stuff already. We went and made them better. We were powerful, and we won the league. We won the league unbeaten, and the people that were doing that were people that were winning the World Cup. And again, I'm not saying there's a very large chance that this year, the team that took us to the Championship this year were a team full of players that went on to win the World Cup, if it's Spain or England particularly, because there's 3 or 4 players in there. So it's not dislike it, but it's just very much there's a real good feeling to it. And when you think of Invincibles, you think of Omri and Bergkamp and Pires, Ljungberg, Lehmann, Sol Campbell. There's those players come to mind. Ashley Cole. They come immediately to mind. But there's also Edu Gaspar. There's Wiltord. There's players like Antonio Reyes that maybe don't get the big conversation around them. Loren, maybe. But they were there. They were a part of it, but maybe not the biggest part. But they're still legendary because they're a part of that squad. Trossard wasn't just a part of this squad that got us a first league title in 22 years and went to a Champions League final and a Carabao Cup final. One, I don't think I've ever seen the crowd that on board as far as the chants, the atmosphere at the Emirates, even Highbury. I think we're at an all-time fever pitch, and it's been slowly brewing, and it was capped off with a Premier League title. But to see Trossard, who wasn't just a squad player, he wasn't just a, if you know, you know. He was our starting left winger for the last 3 years, really. And to do that at the age he is, not that he's mega old, but, I mean, when we bought him, I think there was a lot of conversation around his age, is that a smart one? And I almost want to kind of liken it, very different but similar, to Bruno Guimaraes, if we do manage to sign him. Is people are saying he's 28, nearly 29. Is he kind of past it? But then you look at the market, for example, Tonali, 100 plus million. Buadi looks like it's going to be 100 plus million. Elliot Anderson, 100 plus million. There's Fernandez, 80 million. There's all these central midfielders going for very good money who are 24 or under to big clubs. Whereas we might go and get the one who's at this moment probably the best of the bunch for 65, 70 million. But everyone's worry is, he's 28. Look back to Trossard. We're looking at Mudryk. We were looking in the years prior to that. We bought in already Pepe. We'd looked at Dembele. We'd looked at, who was the one? Was it Thomas Lemar that we kept looking at for massive money and tried to... I think we put in a £94 million bid for that guy once. Aubameyang, Lacazette, all these guys. And you end up with a Trossard. And the fact, your natural reaction, very similar to what it was last summer when we heard the news that we weren't going to get Rodrigo. We were going to actually keep Trossard for another year, but without an extension. But we're going to bump up his pay. And everyone went, what? We've got a 31-year-old that we're not adding time on, so we're not going to make any money. But we are giving him more money. And it was all to do with scaling the contracts because obviously Lewis Skelly and Waneri and all these guys got new contracts. He was on par with a lot of these guys and he shouldn't be. He should be a much higher based on, one, his performance, but also like longevity and tenure at the club and just, as a professional. So it was actually a very good thing the club did. But again, the outward optics to us fans were going, but we wanted Rodrigo or Vinicius or Mbappe, all these silly things we do. But Rodrigo felt like a real thing. And you look at all those players and then you end up with Trossard and you go, And it happened when we signed him. I remember that summer and everyone was going, that January, and everyone went, I know he's good, but I mean, his age and, it's only 20 million. Other teams are spending 300 million and 100 million or 80 million on players, whatever. And I feel like that's, likening to the Bruno Guimaraes signing this year if we do get it across the line. Because it is true. You can almost look at what United have just done with buying Tielemans for 41 million. That's a similar one. Whereas Man United fans all naturally went, we should be looking at Elliot Anderson for 113 million. We should look at Buadi for 100 million or Tonali for 100 million. Why are we getting him? Well, guess what? Out of all those players, Tielemans is the most experienced, has done the most at the biggest stage, and he's still very good. But because of his age, but 41 million in today's market compared to spending 100 plus means you can go get Andre Santos and you might be able to go get another one. And you add that to Menu and Bruno Fernandes. And that's what we're doing with Bruno Guimaraes is if we go and buy Buadi for 100 million, one, he's 18. We don't know what we're getting, especially in the Premier League. Can we trust him? I don't know. But Bruno Guimaraes, guess what? He could start game week 1 to game week 10 in the starting 6 and we'll be absolutely fine because he's a world-class football player. And we're still paying big money for him, but it's not the money in which, similar to last year, we looked at Gyökeres, we got him for 60 million, which allowed us to go get Eze for 60 million. But instead, we could have got Isaac for 120. We dodged that Isaac bullet. I'm not saying Isaac might not come back and be unbelievable this year for Liverpool. His knees looked a little cooked, but generally speaking, we managed to get 2 players in 2 positions for the price of 1. Guimaraes there allows us to actually potentially, and there is a high chance, we go and get Alvarez and Rodgers to add that to Bruno Guimaraes. And when you think of Premier League tested, world class, quality, right age group, that is unbelievable business, as opposed to going, it might be the sexiest summer might be, let's go get Boadi, let's go get Livramento, let's go get Bruno G, let's get Vinicius, and let's get, God knows, that Rodgers as well. And you go, oh, well, Vinny's 150, for example, Rodrigo maybe 150, Barcola might be 130, 140. But instead, we're looking at that area where, I think the Rodgers one, I do believe will end up at close to 100 million. I think he will be the biggest signing, even if we get Alvarez. I know Alvarez has already been quoted at 130 million. I do think there'll be a player swap involved, and there'll be some kind of PSR movement on that one. Even if it's pay this much up front and the rest is a loan, and then next summer we pay the rest, or whatever it is. I don't think we'll pay the full amount, but I do think the Rodgers one will be the full amount, because I think that's the only way Villa sell, because they need money in. And I mean, in the last 48 hours, they lost Tielemans, 41 million. It's ridiculous that someone had the release clause in there like that. Digne, another release clause, might be going to PSG to be a backup fullback, left back, after having a decent, until last night, campaign for France. They're looking at losing potentially Rodgers already. There's someone else leaving Villa potentially. I can't remember who it is. But then Onana's already out for another 8 months. There's a lot going on at Aston Villa that is a little bit worrying if you're a Villa fan. But it's all because of PSR. And the benefit of Arsenal is if Digne goes, and if Tielemans already has gone, they need to replace a fullback and a midfielder. They don't have the PSR room to go buy world class there. But if they go sell 90 million for Rodgers, they can go get yourself. Do you know what? In today's market, I don't know. But even if you look at Arsenal, you could go buy Ben White for 30 million. You could go buy, God knows. I really can't think of someone off the top of my head. Njai for Everton. Maybe put in a tester out there. They could do that, and you go. And if you're a Villa fan, you go, do you know what? I don't mind it. The problem for them is that the midfielder market is absolutely unreal, so they're going to have to be really sly, because Tielemans at 41 million is an absolute steal, but that was their player. The next cheapest one is Bruno Guimaraes. He's not going to go Newcastle to Villa. I know there is European football at stake there, but when Arsenal are involved and they're the current champions, etc., it's different. So there's so much going on with that market, but the crux of all of this, what I was trying to say was, Trossard has officially gone to Besiktas. I think he'd be truly missed. I think he'd be remembered for winning the championship for us, for scoring that West Ham goal. I think is probably his most legendary moment. It almost gave me Wiltord vibes. I think Wiltord, if you say to an average Arsenal fan, I'm talking just a normal guy that doesn't have every stat to hand, what year did we buy Wiltord? When did we sell him? What did we buy him for? What did we sell him for? Name a goal that wasn't the Old Trafford goal. And most of us will go, I can't really answer all of them off the top of my head, but I can certainly remember the Old Trafford goal. And I think Trossard, maybe we will remember the fact that we bought him instead of Mudryk, and we bought him for so cheap, and we sold him for almost the same money 3.5 years later at that age. Is unbelievable business by the club. Maybe we'll remember that. But I think truly what we'll remember is his goggles and that goal at West Ham, because that goal might be one of the most iconic goals. And Wiltord goals are iconic because we won us the title at Old Trafford. This one didn't win us the title, but it certainly, it got us so close that I think that was the one trip up left that we were really worried about, that game, the way the game was going, what happened directly after the goal. I think it's just such an iconic goal, and I think it'll be remembered forever. The scenes at that away end at West Ham, I think, almost feels like we won the league at West Ham. In hindsight, we didn't. We won it at Crystal Palace. But it was all kind of said and done, or whatever. Well, we actually won it. We're not playing, obviously, which became another iconic moment. But I think with Trossard, we think of grumpy, tired Trossard, goggles, goal at West Ham, unbelievable fee, unbelievable servant, cult hero. So that's my bit on Trossard. We kind of touched on a couple of the other stuff, things like Tielemans moving, the reported fee of Boadi to Man City. And I mean, a team with 115 charges paying upfront 116 million for Ali Anson, and then buying an 18-year-old who's not going to start for them straight away for 100 million. it does feel wrong when you got Villa selling their best players to try and play in the Champions League next year. And every year Villa seem to get Champions League, lose 4 players, replace them with 2, and we go too small a squad to compete. Then they get Champions League again, and then they lose 4 more good players. They bring in 2, and we go too much to compete, and they keep doing it. But it's mad that they're doing that. It's mad that Newcastle are going to sell Isaac, Gordon, Tonali, and Bruno Guimaraes in the space of 12 months and can't replace it as the richest club in the world. It seems mad that, Man United aren't in the race for Elliot Anderson, and they're not in the race for Bouadi, and they're not in the race for Bruno Guimaraes. They've gone, no, we're going to have Tielemans 41. He's, very good player. We're going to go get Andre Santos. He's the future. He's a very good player, and I think a lot of people gone under people's radar, but a very good player at Chelsea. They've gone smart. They've not gone big because they have to think about their PSR and, what if we don't retain Champions League, then we're going to have to sell our best players and blah, 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 blah. They've got to balance their books. Even Arsenal, we're pushing certain ones still this year. Hincapi got bought this year. We're selling people like Trossard. We're bringing players in. Still spending a lot, but you can when you get to Champions League finals and Carabao Cup finals and win the league and come second 3 years running. Your PSR margin is very good. And for a long time, Arsenal were a net positive. The only team net positive for 15 plus years. In football history, by the way. They've competed in any kind of top division. Paid off a stadium. Sold our captain every single summer. We've been there. We've done it. We've done the trenches. Liverpool won the league, spent 450 million, failed. Going to have to spend more, but going to have to also sell a lot. They also did sell a lot. They did well on their net spend. Now let's look at Man City. They're at $500 million in the last 12 months. That's before they look at Bouadi and before they look at Elliot Anderson. So by the end of this summer, we could be looking at close to $750 million in about 13 months for a team under investigation for sports washing. And I can't tell you enough that I don't understand how it's allowed. How is that Elliot Anderson deal an upfront deal? And how can they in the same... Can you imagine if, for example, there's talk at the minute that Arsenal might get Alvarez and they might get Rodgers. We're going to have our cake eating it too. But it's going to be at the cost of losing our main centre-forward from this year. Plus cash. There's going to have to be a Rodgers deal that might be pushed in some capacity or a payment plan. Plus, we're going to buy Bruno Guimaraes instead of going after Bouadi, who we wanted originally. We're going to have to maybe retain a couple of players that we didn't want to. We're going to have to sell cheap on some just to get rid of them off the books. We're doing this stuff. But this team here, yeah, of course they're rich. Of course they're a big club who are paying more wages than any other club in the world. They're able to go and buy Elliot Anderson, Bouadi, God knows who else they're going to buy. Last year they bought 2 keepers in one summer because they actively got it wrong. And they spent over 50-60 million on that disaster of a decision. They went and bought Semenyo, the best winger in the league that wasn't in the top 2 teams. They went and bought the best centre-back that was in the best two teams. Now they're looking at the best 17 to 18-year-old in world football, and 100 million is okay. They're buying the best English player at the tournament that isn't Jude Bellingham and Kane. All these things are great, and if you're a big club, that's how you move. But what we don't understand is the payment structure. How are they able to just spend that much money? How can their PSR be that good? And again, Arsenal, I can tell you right now, if we buy Rodgers and Alvarez, we have our cake and eat it too, which would be lovely. No matter what deals we do to get that done, or who we have to lose to get that done, there will be question marks of they have to win it happened last year with Liverpool. We all said they have to win the treble now. They bought Isaac and Wirtz in one summer. Do you know what's going to happen? And by the way, they were also payment plans and they had horrible injuries. If City buy these 2 players on top of what they've already done last January and last summer, we're not all going to turn around and go, they have to win the treble or not. They're not even going to get any kind of agitation. But I tell you what Arsenal are going to get this season. They have to win the treble or the quadruple because you can't have Rodgers and Alvarez. Rodgers and Alvarez are great players. It's not like we're bringing in Jude Bellingham and Vinicius or Jude Bellingham and Dembele. It's the market, but we are going to be scrutinised heavily for it and we're going to have to back it up. Whereas the team that are actively investigated for sports washing, we don't know what's going on with it, are just spending $750 million in 13 months up front. And that is the kind of money, after this summer, if we do get Alvarez, Rodgers, blah, 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 Arteta will be at 1.5 billion spent in 7.5 years. To give you an idea, half of that is being spent in the last 12 months by a team who are actively under investigation. So make of that what you will. I don't like it. It stinks of something that I don't like this World Cup does. Because, I opened up my Instagram and it said 54 minutes ago, Declan Rice on this day. It's, by the way, if this scares you, I just said all that open. It's like breaking news. It's not. It just says on this day in 2023, Declan Rice made his home in N5, which is lovely. But I do realise now I started that you probably all panicked when you were hearing that. So I'll take that back because he did walk off injured again in the last England game, and that is very much a worry. And then last night at the World Cup, Saliba did walk off injured as well, which is absolutely terrifying. What I'm going to do here is my only source in world football, other than James McNicholas, who, in all fairness, we talk about wrestling, is Hand of Arsenal, as we all are. And I'm going to read out his update, and this is from 12 hours ago. As far as Julian Alvarez, from my last update, every single point still remains true. Arteta sees Alvarez as a major marquee transformational signing. I can add to that the Gunner blog actually talked about on Arscast. James McNicholas himself, he said, I wouldn't want to put this in writing, but Arteta is enamoured with him. And usually when he's enamoured with a player, he gets that player, which is quite interesting and something worth noting for someone who's very in the know. There are direct, fresh contacts between the ownership, Arsenal and Atleti regarding a possible transfer. There is still a gap in evaluation for the Argentines. Story with Luca Bendoni. Again, respect to every journalist on their work, but I remain adamant if the player is open to a move to North London if his dream move to Barca fails. Atleti remain adamant they will not sell to Barca, but my understanding is Barca will engage in talks for one final attempt post-World Cup. A deal remains difficult, but is not deterred Arsenal from trying to position themselves in an opportunity to sign a top-tier forward should Atleti sanction their sale. Bertra is currently in the capital of Madrid with his family. One source said he also taken the opportunity to meet with Atleti officials directly, but I'm waiting for further confirmation on this. So that one's really interesting because I think we all saw that rumour early on in the summer, which was we offered them, I think it was like 40 million and Gyökeres, or I don't know, something like that. The only thing this is the part I don't get with Arsenal is, in the past we've bought players for 40, 50 million, let's say. We then sell them for 15 million. Look at Ben White, for example. There's a player who was 22. We bought a centre-back, made him one of the best right-backs, and by the way, would be playing in the World Cup right now if he didn't get injured. And over 4 years, we made him a Premier League champ. And now he's prime age. He's 27. Probably the best English fullback in the league that isn't Reece James, in my opinion. We bought him for 50 million. 50 million. The market has only exploded since then. The inflation's gone absolutely crazy. So that's a £75 million player, right? Now, if we were to sell him, it'd be about 18 to 20 million. And I feel like only Arsenal get this. And for a long time, it was because, sometimes we do buy a player for 50 million and then they fall out of favour slightly, they play again, we don't win anything, and then we sell him. And then you can kind of go, yeah, well, they've seen him fall out of favour a couple of times, let's say. Now, we're winning stuff. So you'd think that now people are like, well, no, it's all, like look at Jesus. Apparently we can't get any fee for him. It's a 5-time Premier League winner. He's 28. He's Brazilian. He's unbelievable. I don't know. Some of that stuff doesn't sit exactly right with me. So Gyökeres, top goal scorer in Europe for a couple of years. He won the Gerd Müller Award in the Ballon d'Or ceremony, won back-to-back championships with Sporting Lisbon. He joins Arsenal for 60 million with add-on 65. He scores 21 goals, which is more than Julian Alvarez did at Atletico last year. He is 27. And he won the Premier League. So he's now 3 league titles in a row. And he played nearly all those games. He went with Sweden. He got them qualified. He did well in the World Cup. So that guy's 65 million, inflation, blah, blah. That's a £100 million player, right? No. He's going to be a make-weight for another player who got 7 league goals last year. And I do think Julian Alvarez is an unbelievable football player, and stats don't always tell the full picture. And do I think he's technically a lot better than Gyökeres? Of course. I loved Gyökeres this year. I think it's something we've needed for years. For 10 years, we've said we need a guy who's not that technically great, but he just scores goals. We've all agreed on that. Pundits have, fans have, everyone has. Why not also just buy a goal scorer? We went and bought a goal scorer finally, and what happened? We won the league for the first time in 22 years. And it feels like that's a conversation for the last 10 years. We're now going to go, do you know what, let's get rid of that guy. Let's add another technical guy to go with Havertz up front and Moreno. And now we've got 3 of the same, similar kind of elk, silky, real good. And the football will be much better. I'm sure Gyökeres helped us go over the line massively. So did Eze, and there's certain players that definitely did. But do I think that the style that everyone complained about, the set piece FC, the dark arts, do I think a lot of that was because we also were missing one technical player? Because as far as technique goes, we were playing with 10, I would say, a lot of the time. Yeah, with Gyökeres. Whereas when Havertz plays, naturally the team looks better. But we don't always win. We've seen that over the last 2 or 3 years. We came second. So I don't like the concept of going backwards a little bit. And I don't like the idea of him being a make-weight. And they're talking about 60 to 70 million plus Gyökeres. I'm thinking, so Atletico are going to get a guy who's going to probably bang in 30 goals next year to replace the guy who banged in 7 this year. They're going to make 60 million off of it. And what they bought Alvarez for, they're going to actually still make 60 plus million. They're also going to have Gyökeres. And I'm just sitting there thinking, how is that? What is happening? I do not know. I don't understand what we do with our sales and why do people just lose value? Like, the only player I could currently say that would, if you went for our squad, who could we make a profit on? If we sold David Raya right now, mid-contract, I think he goes for 50, 60 million. I do agree with that. I think there's a profit. Gabriel we bought for 30 plus million. I think with age and with all that, I genuinely think, unless he goes to Saudi, probably make that money back. And that's the best centre-back in the league last year, in my opinion. Timber we bought for 30 million. I do think if we sold him right now, we'd sell him for 50, 60. Calafiori bought for 30. I genuinely think there was talk of him going for 50 plus million. So Calafiori. Hincapi, again, maybe 50, 60 million. And we bought him for 35, it turns out. Saliba, 28 million, I think it was. Unbelievable signing. I think he's a £100 million player, and I think everyone knows that. So I think there's some profit there. Now when you actually get into our midfield, Zubimendi, I think we lose money on. I think, obviously, the homegrown talent you're going to make money on. But Zubimendi, Norgard, I think you lose money on. I think Eze, you lose money on. I think Havertz, we lose money on. Gyökeres, we lose money on. I think Madueke, we definitely lose money on. And we lost money on Trossard. So and Jesus, we'll lose money on. Fabio Vieira, we're going to lose about, I think it's like 20 million. So I just don't understand that, because especially Champions League, champions, is it the way we're buying, when we're buying? I don't know what it is, but something wrong about that all our equities in our defence and nothing is in the other. The only other player I think, weirdly, that you could actually make a profit on right now is Declan Rice. 105 million. I think if Elliot Anderson's 115, I think he goes for 130 if we sell him to Madrid right now. So I think, bizarrely, Declan Rice has a profit on him right now. But again, that's only dwindling, especially with the injuries. Is this like something that's going to start being like a regular thing with Declan Rice? Same with Saliba. We do not know. But talking with someone else we're going to make a loss on eventually. Update on Bruno Guimaraes. And again, this is not me being anti these signings. I think if our summer was Rodgers, Bruno Guimaraes, Hincapi, Alvarez, Tazoles, and we sold Trossard, Nwaneri, Vieira, Kivior, those guys, Jesus, I think we're 100% massively improved. I do, as a team. But there's something that doesn't sit right with me. I love Gyökeres, and I understand he's not great. He's not the best football player. But I just think there's something to this concept that we've asked for a goal scorer for so many years. Not ever done it, like a proper goal hanger. Not someone who's going to drift out and look for like long shots like Jesus or Aubameyang even. And Aubameyang was an unbelievable goal scorer. But this kind of typical guy, we've all asked for it. We got it. We won the league. And then we're like, yeah, let's go back to what the old trusted, where it used to mean we come second. I nearly lost everything there. Bruno Guimaraes. Here's the update from Hand of Arsenal. My understanding is club-to-club talks have not taken place, except a phone call from Newcastle asking Arsenal about their stance, which didn't clarify anything between the two parties. Berto is still wanting Kai to handle all negotiations until if a fair valuation can be reached between both parties. Newcastle are aiming to secure a fee within 80 to 85 million range as a minimum. Bruno is fully sold on the project and is awaiting his agents and Kia Garapchin, by the way, not Kai. I don't know why I said Kai earlier. Handle the situation respectfully. That's the update. I do think of all these signings, I think there's a little bit of naughtiness with all of them that could become a problem. I think Alvarez wanting Barcelona is his dream, but the only reason he's not going to get it is because Atletico will not deal with Barcelona. is slightly problematic because you're accepting this guy doesn't want us. And we, in the last 12 months, we've kind of accepted that we buy a lot of players that didn't necessarily think we were their first choice, and they were not our first choice. So I don't necessarily hate that, but there's something a little bit icky about paying that much and losing such a fan favourite in Gyökeres, or maybe someone who's a bit Marmite with some of the fans, actually. But someone who's going to be synonymous with that title win. Like, if we don't win the title next year or the year after, Gyökeres was here for 1 year, and that was the year we won the league, and there'll be no way that anyone can argue. So I think, I don't know, there's something to it. But either way, this guy doesn't want Arsenal necessarily. It's going to be the backup option. Bit icky, and could become a drama that goes on until the end of the summer. Bruno Guimaraes, I think because of the sale of Gordon and Tonali being done, Guimaraes being so fiercely loyal, even though he's the one that, if all of them, he's the one that you would sell. Because Gordon and Tonali have the age. They're going to appreciate a little bit. Guimaraes, if we wait one more year and go sign him next year at 29 going on 30, I think he might already be 29 going on 30. I don't know. Another year on, he'll come to us for 15 million next year. So Newcastle almost do have to sell because they're not going to make any money unless he re-signs. But again, you're still not going to make any money on him. And now he wants to move. It does become even ickier for them. But it does feel like of all the new sales that Newcastle are doing, this is the one they're going to become the most awkward about. And that's annoying to add to another awkward one with Alvarez. Then you get to Rodgers. They've lost Tielemans now. They're going to lose Digne. Their best active player at their football club is Rodgers. They've got depreciating Ollie Watkins up front. They've got good players like Kamara and Onana in the midfield, but they've lost Tielemans, which is massive. Arsenal also looking at Konza. This could be a step too far for them, and they go, I know we need to make some money back, but we just can't. Our fans, we can't look at them in the eye and say, yeah, Digne, Konza, Tielemans, and Rodgers are all gone, and we've brought in these three players you don't know, but they're actually quite good. I don't think they can get away with it. So again, that could become real icky. So some of those are a bit awkward. Losing Trossard and Brian Tazoles, again, even though it's going to cost us 20 million net on that kind of position. And I don't think Tazoles is supposed to come in to be our first choice left wing. I really don't. I think Rodgers or Eze is supposed to be our left side next year. So I don't think necessarily that, but I mean the market is crazy enough that we're going to spend 40 million on Tazoles. Rodgers. Here's the update on Rodgers on Hand of Arsenal. Currently, I'm not obliged to update on this current file. When I can, I will sure to explain things in detail, which is very interesting. And Saka also posted a picture of him the other day, which he notoriously did with Eze, but right before he signed. People at Arsenal maintain he is the top target for the winger and central attacker role. For now, all I can say is Spurs showed some interest, but as of today, Morgan's focus is Arsenal if a deal can be agreed. And then underneath it says others. I saw reports about the United Arab Emirates interest in Norgard, but he wants to stay in London for at least another year if he's able to. I also asked contacts at Fenerbahce about Jesus, who say currently there is no major interest as of today, and the people around Tazoles deal on both sides expected to progress pretty soon. So Tazoles one feels like it's going to get done. The Hincapi one is already done. The Meslier one is already done. It's the next three large again, I don't want to go through my transfers at the start of the season. Sorry, at the start of the transfer window, because we kind of, Joe, myself, a few others, we kind of did the who's coming in, who's going out, and I want to do a whole episode on that at the end of the transfer window. But I'm just glancing at it already, and the players that I thought were going out, half of them are definitely not going to go out, and the players coming in, ironically, I think I've got Rodgers, Alvarez, Hincapi, and Monga, who isn't going to happen now. But Rodgers, Alvarez, and Hincapi, and I put a surprise midfield signing around the 40 million mark, and I put Camavinga. That's Bruno Guimaraes. So, I mean, that part is not too far off. And also, if you had said to me that I was doing that almost like a dream scenario, like this would be a very good summer. So, when you think of it that way, it's, I don't know, this is, if we even go 12 months back, maybe not 12 months. It's hard because we're progressing every year, and I think maybe it's becoming more normal. But if someone said you're gonna lose Trossard, who's aging, you're gonna lose, let's say, Norgard, Jesus, Vieira, Kivior, and Wineri. But you're gonna add Julian Alvarez, Morgan Rogers, Bruno Guimaraes, Cappy full-time, Meslier was the third keeper, I think we'd all be going, well, it's not FIFA. I genuinely believe that that's how we'd all feel, like, this is not FIFA. So we have to kind of pinch ourselves and go, all right. And again, now imagine that team that has all those players in. It's a little bit naughty, isn't it? Like, it's a little bit exciting because it's actually a very good team. It's a team that I think are going to play very good football. I mean, yeah, Julian Alvarez, he's just an unbelievable football player. He's an unbelievable set-piece taker as well, as far as free kicks. Scores a lot of long-range efforts, and Morgan Rogers takes a lot of long-range efforts, and one way to deal with low blocks, set pieces and long-range efforts, so maybe we're working on that. Also tying in play, you think of Arsenal's like lovely football over the years, and little like 1-2 around the corner, similar to that goal that Spain scored last night with I think Olmo lofted it off to Porro. That's the kind of Arsenal goal you expect to see, in my opinion. And I think adding people like, on any given day, having maybe an Odegaard, a Moreno, a Bruno Guimaraes sat behind Alvarez and Saka and Eze on the left, let's say, or Rodgers. I think that team's going to play nice football. I don't see how it doesn't. And I think before, a lot of the problem was you couldn't really bounce it off the forward because he got better by the end of the season, but he was looking to run in behind. And we need a player like that. That's the only thing I'd say is I think with this one, our three forward options are not that. When you look at Moreno, Havertz and Alvarez, no one really wants to stretch a defence like Gyökeres did or bully a defence. And I do think it's missing that. I do think the plan would be that Rodgers is going to do that because the way he plays is if Havertz drops into that space, he's going to flick it on, and Rodgers has got, I think, some of the best, and I've said this on the podcast a couple of years, probably the most powerful running in world football. That kind of striding through the middle with the ball at his feet or without. He's so powerful. He's such a fun player to watch. So I do think we are better off. The Gyökeres one upsets me a little bit. I think if we could get the Alvarez one done and keep Gyökeres, but again, that's too many options. You'd have to sell someone. With the Atletico one, I know you had interest in Jesus. I'd love that Alvarez one to somehow become like a collection of players. Do you know what I mean? Like Nwaneri, Gyökeres, and Jesus. They all go there. I think they showed interest in Martinelli. Always a Martinelli and Gyökeres. And then Rodgers, Eze, and Tazola's your left side. And then Odegaard stays. Because I think Odegaard has to stay. I think he's shown how good he is this World Cup. I don't know. I wonder if there's something like that could be done just to kind of save something. But time will tell on that. I think that's probably as much as we can do on transfers. There's not really anything else that I can see. But last night, Spain did win 2-0 over France, which I think is a bit of a shock. I did really fancy Spain, I must admit, and that's not me being, post. I'm not going. I don't have clarity, post-match clarity, and going. Well, yeah, no, of course I thought that would happen. I just did, and my issue with France from the get-go has been they're very good. They're unbelievable attackers, but you can't have two average midfielders like Chouameni and Rabiot, and then Kone is very good. And I think, again, another one United are looking at and Arsenal looking at. And I think he's someone that we might move to if we can't get a Bruno Guimaraes done. But you can't play with two midfielders and four attackers against a proper team. I think you can do it against a lot of the smaller teams because you're just going to outpower them. But they've also been in shootouts with a lot of teams because other teams are going, oh, wow, they've got their midfield, we can run through them. And if you get a good enough shot away or make a good enough play or whatever it is, you're going to score. So I think they were eventually going to come up against a team. I think the worst case scenario for them was coming up against Spain. Because Spain are full of... Remove Yamal, because when he's at Spain, I feel like almost he becomes another one of these Spanish players that... I don't know how to explain it. Spain sometimes produce 11 of the exact same guy, but they just work so well together. There's no superstars. They just work well together. And they've done it again. And Yamal almost fits perfectly in there, similar to how Saka does at Arsenal a little bit, where it's like, he's not necessarily acts like a superstar sometimes. He's just one of the guys, but it makes it all work. And I think they were just way too smart for France. France thought we're going to blow them away. Spain literally just made 3 passes and ended up in that giant hole in the middle of the field and went, oh, we've got loads of space. And once they got a goal, they didn't even bother running forward. They allowed France to get back into shape and then just go backwards. Then France would go all out attack, then knock it back into that space and then go, all right. It was like piggy in the middle. And I think they were just too naive, France. And I think we didn't see it coming necessarily because we're also scared of France's attack. But if you don't have the ball, because my issue is, I think if England were in the same boat as Spain last night, 1-0 up, 2-0 up with 20 minutes to go, I think we bring on Dan Burn and we go to 5 at the back and we sit, and basically Mbappe, Elise, Dembele and Doué have open season on the goal, and we just hope we stay in it. Whereas Spain didn't even attempt to go into low block. France couldn't lay a finger. It reminded me of City for so many years. City have done that, where you almost like, they're 2-0 up and you think, oh, now they're going to have to batten down the hatches because here comes the attack. And then the other team just never get the attack. And you think, how come that's not happening? It's because they don't have the ball. It's just good football. Ironically, I think England are closer to France in the sense that we have 2 or 3 very good attackers, like unbelievable world-class attackers. A 2-man midfield, because Bellingham's playing next to Kane. We've got Saka, if he's fit, unbelievable on the right. Gordon playing unbelievably on the left. But then you've got a massive gap. And then you've got Rice and Anderson. And I think that's very similar to France, but not quite as potent as France. But maybe our midfield's better than France. And I think if Jude Bellingham were to sit in a little bit, I think they would have an opportunity to kind of get in and around Spain if we're against them. But that is something to worry about in a couple of days. Saliba did go down with a back injury, and he did mouth, my back is gone. So I assume we've been waiting for this moment. It's happened. He could not play. There's no bigger game really in world football for him to, at that point, to go, do you know what, I can just take some painkillers and crack on. If he couldn't do that in the semi-final, I think that's a serious issue there, and I think he's going to have a procedure on his back to kind of get over it. I don't think we're seeing him until genuinely January. Personally, they're saying the first international break. It feels like January. I think Rice feels like maybe the first international break. I think Saka might start the season, honestly. I think they're just being very careful. I think you might see him, bide his time. Another one with the Saka one is I wonder if they're interested in Ezra and Rogers as the wingers at the start of next season. I wonder. And maybe we're not thinking about it because we're not thinking about the right side because we've got Saka and Madueke. And I don't think Madueke's helped his cause this. I think that game the other day would really set us all back a little bit. But not ideal. But England do have Argentina tonight. I think the big talking point, obviously, is the ref that's been announced is an MLS ref. Inter Miami and Messi have a 100% record when he's refed. I think an American ref and Mexican VAR and officials, when there's a South American team there, and I know it's a different continent, but it feels too much. It's like if all the officials were, I don't know, French or Spanish. It feels a bit too, because I think there is a general consensus that Europe kind of, in the World Cup, I think everyone at the start has said basically the Europeans are better than everyone else at football now. So you are going to see just Europeans get through. And then when some of the African Cup of Nations teams got through, some of the American teams got through, South American, I think people were like, oh, look, I told you it'd be a World Cup. And then we're kind of whittling it down. And if England do go through, it's the Euros final again in a World Cup, where there was Brazil and Argentina and all these African teams. And you think, oh, okay, maybe Europe are the best. So you do think there's almost an element of bias coming from if you had a European ref. So I don't know. That it does seem a little bit tricky. And I think they haven't done themselves favours when you think people felt a little bit unnerved by Argentina's run to the semi-final and his campaign and the FIFA president's love of superstars. And again, it didn't help much last night because, for him, France-Argentina was the final, wasn't it? Mbappe versus Messi, and maybe Yamal versus Messi is the bigger one because of the Barcelona, same position, then and now. Maybe that's the game he wants. I don't know. There was nothing that told me that that's what they wanted. I think just the best team won last night, but I do worry. My level of conspiracy is not as high as some, but it's certainly triggered. It's certainly there. I think we'll know pretty early in the game. Someone said a really good system would be if the game is at a draw and it gets to 113 minutes in extra time, and the same thing happens to Messi that happened to Jed Spence the other day, that goal that got removed, do they overturn that on VAR? And my answer is no, I don't think it does. And that is probably all you need to know about the thoughts of everyone. But again, England, there was the wire of the camera, there was, the removal of a goal. There's been some stuff there that maybe they're saying, or he might also see Kane and Bellingham as the biggest stars of this tournament and he wants them to win it. I don't know. again, there shouldn't be any issues with who's going to be the stars of the tournament because there should be no involvement. And I don't think there really is, but we've had reason to be concerned since obviously the president of the United States talking about it and having conversations and changing stuff and stuff that's never happened before. There's some odd stuff. But as for the actual game, I don't think England have been playing very good football. I think they were particularly poor the last game. I think they're a much better football team than Argentina. But they do have Messi. And they have some great attackers like Alvarez and they have Martinez. But their centre-backs are mad in Romero and Martinez. Their goalie's good, but again, mad. Their fullbacks aren't good. And this is why Saka and Gordon have to start. Their midfield's okay. Messi's unbelievable. It's going to be interesting because it depends on what England turns up. Because if England go out and go, we need to go take it to them, I think we're the better team. I think we will be able to beat them. But will the size of the occasion, all these types of things, will that get in the way of potentially something for England to worry about? Because again, we're not at many semi-finals in our lifetime. We've certainly been to only one World Cup final. This is a big moment. It's a big moment for those players to create history. And we will find out if they can create that history tonight, 8 o'clock in the UK. I don't know. I've said all along, I've definitely learnt, and maybe it's because we had too much Christmas. As Arsenal fans, maybe we just already experienced so much joy this year that this doesn't feel quite as big. Maybe if Arsenal come second again, I would have been seeking solace in England finally doing it. Maybe there's an element of me that doesn't want to win the World Cup because I feel like as a fan, you need all these grails. You know, if all the grails go, yeah, you still enjoy it, but maybe there's an element, because I can tell you right now, I'm not as freaked out or stressed or hungry for Arsenal as I usually would be, because I lived and breathed every second of it last year and the last 4 years, and we did it. We did the thing that I've been waiting for us to see. So to see it again, you can find, modern day history, never won back to back, domination, just being a fan, something that I'm going to watch every 3 days and enjoy. I'd like to see good football, and I'd also like to see us win 90% of the time. That's always good. We still got the grail for Arsenal. We've all got the grail as football fans of the quadruple. That's never been done. The treble, Arsenal have never done it. We only won one trophy this year, so a double of any sort would be cool next year. But the Champions League is a grail. That's a grail that I am going to continue to chase. And again, the Premier League wasn't a grail because we'd already done it, but it felt like it had become one over 22 years. Whereas now it's never going. If we win it in 3 years or 1 year or 5 years, it's never going to feel like how it did that one. That one will never be replicated. So it feels like almost like I love the chase, but now it's happened. I loved it, but now I'm a little bit sad that chase doesn't exist. But it does, but it's different. And maybe because of that, England don't feel as important right now, because I'm almost like, I don't want them to win. If Arsenal win the league after 22 years and then England win the World Cup, which has happened never in most people listening to this podcast, most of us haven't seen it. Some of us might have. Shout out to the older listeners like my parents and stuff, people that have seen it. But again, they were young. They were 6 when that happened. So it almost feels like this feeling of, I felt that way after the Champions League final. I was sad we didn't win, but I was like, but I'm glad they still won the chase. Because if we'd won that double, I would have been like, oh my God, we've done it all. And if we'd won that double and then England won the World Cup, I would have thought in football, there's nothing for me to see. Like, there's nothing for me to chase. And again, you're always chasing just winning the league every year. You want that feeling, but it'll never be as, to do it all at once. I'm glad that the Champions League is going to be separate to us winning the league for the first time in 22 years. The only worry is we ever win it. Same with the World Cup. So you kind of got to take them when you got them. But I think maybe that is lightening my expectation. So like when I'm watching them, I'm a little bit stressed. But not really. I'm stressed in the way that I feel when Arsenal play a Carabao Cup game, honestly. Maybe an FA Cup game. And that quarter-final, I felt probably as stressed as I would in an Arsenal quarter-final. So I wasn't overly worried. The semi tonight, I might feel closer to how I do on an average Arsenal Premier League game. And then the final, I think I would feel like an Arsenal final. I think because once you're there, it's so exciting. But it hurts a lot when England lose. Like I remember the Euro final, both Euro finals really hurt. But I do get over it very quick. Whereas with Arsenal, I struggle to get over it very quick. So I definitely learnt that. But again, I do think there is an element of like maybe I've had too much Christmas, because as a sports fan, you have all these, I talk about the grails. For me, there's England winning the World Cup. Need to see it. Arsenal winning Europa Cup. The Europa Cup. The Champions League. Obviously, there's things like trebles and quadruples. That's good, but that's separate. These are grails. World Cup, Champions League, Dallas Cowboys winning the Super Bowl, the Baltimore Orioles winning the World Series. These are things I want to see as a sports fan. On that list was also Arsenal winning the league. That's ticked off. Of the 5 things I really wanted to see, ticked off. 1. If England were to win the World Cup, to tick off 2, the Cowboys aren't going to win the Super Bowl, so I feel confident with that. But I want one in football. But I also don't want to not win the Champions League next year. I want to win the Champions League next year. But I do fear not having anything to chase. But I guess you just find new things, and domination is a new chase. And to go back to back, there's always a way to find it. Go 3 in a row, 4 in a row, 5 in a row. Quadruples, trebles. There's all things. But that feeling was so good to win the championship after that long, that I almost didn't want to have the feeling so soon after of winning the Champions League for the first time, because I feel like we would have got lost in it. So I'm glad it's going to be separate. I just hope we can do it. But anyway, I've gone on a bit of a tangent at the end there. Enjoy the World Cup tonight. Shout out to all the different countries that listen to podcasts. I know that was quite England-centric, but hopefully there was a lot of Arsenal talk finally. And I feel like that is creeping back in. I think each week now you'll start seeing a lot more of Arsenal than you will World Cup. And I'll only heat up, and that's why you need to jump on the Patreon, because I'll be doing all sorts of Arsenal stuff on there. Breaking news, like random questions that you guys send in or I make up, or thoughts about Arsenal in history, what we think is going to come up. We've got things like the review of our transfer spend. We've got what we expect this season. We've got so much to get going. Now the season's getting closer and the pre-seasons are going to start beginning. So enjoy the World Cup, because it is over this weekend. Check us out next Monday on Guns Rust here on iTunes, Spotify. If you want us on Patreon, will be more episodes at the end of this week. So if you want more of us in your ear rolls, jump on there now. Click the link below and sign up. For now, enjoy the World Cup, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.